Okay, so leadership. You guys are the leaders of these vast organizations, these huge, complex organizations we call airports. What are your thoughts on the importance of being a firm leader and presenting like a true, defined course for your staff? So we'll start with Mark.
That's a great question. I read a quote once, and I heard it was attributed to Jimmy Carter's wife, Rosalind, but she said, a good leader takes people where they want to go. A great leader takes them not where they want to go, but where they ought to be. And the difference between the two is tough, because in our case, we're trying to take them somewhere where we think we should be, Kansas City, in the vision. And a lot of people don't agree, and they don't think that that's their vision. And you have to stick with your guns on your vision, and your staff is behind you, and just keep pushing on.
I would agree with the decisiveness and setting the expectations. I think one of the best things a leader can do is make sure that people know your expectations. If you don't tell people where you want to be, what they should be doing, it's hard for them to do it. The second is the decisiveness, and that's a harder one, I think, sometimes, because there are many, many times in this job that you're trying to please hundreds of different people, all with different agendas. And at the end of the day, as an airport director or as a leader, we know our industry and we should know our business and we should have done our research. So making that decision and sticking to it, I think, is critical. And along the way, people will see that decision-making power as important.
Well, I think obviously in our position, leadership is a critical skill and asset to have. And I think, you build that and learn what to do over a career. And so I guess from my focus, we have the external things that we have to do from a leadership standpoint. But when we're talking about, I'll focus a little bit more on staff and what we need to do for staff from a leadership standpoint. Communication is immensely important. Communicating the message, communicating the expectation is important. But I also think as a good leader, you have to be sensitive and you have to know when to adjust. So it's not about always just being decisive and frankly dictating kind of where we're going to go for the future. But leading by example as well. If you have high expectations of your staff, then you better have high expectations of yourself, and you better walk the talk at the end of the day, and that's very important.
I just want to focus on something that Mark said. I guess a lot of what you guys are doing, because you have these huge projects that you have to get up off the ground, or initiatives. So I'm assuming that a large part of your job, or a good portion of your job, is like coalition building, getting everyone to buy in and selling the vision. Say, well, this is necessary for you, Mark. It's the terminal and getting that built, et cetera. And you mentioned it, Dave, earlier about the prospects of Wingspan and getting that educated, even though it wasn't that much of a tough sell. So how much of your time do you think is spent selling the idea and getting people to buy in? I'll start with you, Dave.
Yeah, well, I think we have to spend more and more time doing that. I think as we have, unfortunately, things happen in government today, and since we are, most of us, some type of political subdivision or part of a city or county government, we're fighting what's going on elsewhere around the country, whether that's at local, state, or federal levels, and some of the negative things that occur. And so when you lose that trust at various levels of government, then we have to try to build that back with the things that we're doing and trying to move forward. So I think communication, again, out in the community is extremely important, building that level of trust and delivering on what you say you're going to do. I don't want to use the same term again, but basically walk the talk. So if you say you're going to do something, deliver on it, build that level of trust in the community. But we go through so much in these projects from a planning perspective that we're deep. I mean, we are in the minutia as we're going through this over time. So our understanding of why we're needing to move these things forward, is critically obvious to us. I mean, it's a very easy sell internally once you get there. Trying then to communicate that in a cohesive way to the public to bring them to the same place without having to bring them through the entire process with you is difficult, and it takes a lot of effort and a lot of skill. And I think, these days, if you're going to be successful, you have to find a way to do that. And I think, that's what you find in airport directors and CEOs and leadership today is you've got to be able to make that transition from being internal to that external message and how you communicate that to bring people on board.
Rhonda?
Well, to me, I think it's funny, but this is probably the least understood industry of any that's out there. And that's because it is so different. And so when you can talk to a lot of leaders in the community who run some of the largest corporations, and they don't understand the day in and outs of an airport. And so being out in the community and making sure that they know who you are and they know the face, and you can assure the community that your business is important. I think it's critically important. So when you come to these large projects, whether it be a terminal or a runway or a renovation or anything of that nature, you've got your facts together. And if they haven't seen you before, if you haven't been out in the community getting their trust, it's going to be a hard sell. And I think that's one of the most critical things that we need to do is understand the partnership that exists between the community that you're in and the asset you're managing. And all of us know that the airport's one of the greatest assets in any community. So it's absolutely critical.
Mark?
Another quote, you're never an expert in your own hometown. You say something, I've been doing this for 31 years, but go hire a consultant to get them to tell us the same thing you said a couple years ago. And that's what a lot of our elected officials want. The turnover at that level is incredible, every 4 years in our case. So we're constantly re-educating. And many times that requires employing an outside professional company to come in and verify what the staff has been working on. Even though, like you've heard, we know the details, we know the minutia, but because the public's been in an airport, they're all of a sudden experts, and they know what they like and they know what they don't like.
So along each of your careers, you've probably come across a person or persons that's kind of impacted you personally going forward. So share with us right now just someone who has impacted your career or persons that have impacted your career.
Mine was actually before I probably started working. So it was in high school, my senior year, and I was a 4.0 student. Grades were important to me. It was a small school, so that wasn't that much of an accelerated program, but grades were important to me. And I also played volleyball, and volleyball was important. So my senior year, my high school coach for volleyball was also the physical education teacher. So it started the senior year, typical PE class. He said, we're going to learn 3 things, and it's not just about the physical side of sports. We're going to learn about leadership, and we're going to learn about mentoring. And he said, we're going to learn about teamwork. And we all sort of laughed it off because we all just wanted to play whatever we were playing for the day. And throughout the semester, he would periodically stop and try to educate all of us or ask us questions, and we really didn't pay a lot of attention. So it came Christmas break, and back then, there was no texting or emailing. So a report card came to the house, and in PE, I had a B, the only B I'd ever had in high school. And, I knew it was wrong. It obviously was a mistake, but I couldn't say anything until I got back to school. So the first day of break was over. I went back to school, and I was at his door waiting. And I said, can I talk to you, Coach? And he said, sure. And I said, I think you got my report card mixed up. I said, I got a B in PE. And he said, I know. And he said, that's what you deserved. And, it took me back for a second. And I said, why? And he said, because I told you this course was more about leadership and mentoring and really about teamwork. And he said, you may be the best player on the team, but you play for yourself. You don't play for the team. And he said, of all the people in the class who look up to, who people look up to and who have the ability to shape people's lives, he said, you don't take that. You don't take that seriously, and you don't see that value. And he said, when I see others asking you about maybe a technique or how to do this, he said, you really don't take an interest in helping them. So he said, you deserve a B in this class because it wasn't about the physical piece. It was more about that. And that was a hard lesson for me to learn because I never got that B back, and it sort of erased my perfect 4.0. But it did teach me a great lesson. And today I use that throughout my career for 30 years. I've used that lesson, and it's really made me a better person. And think about the role you play as you move up in your career and how you impact people in what you say and what you do and how you act.
I think I have multiple people. I mean, maybe sound a bit cliche-ish in the sense of, my dad really got me into aviation. I was fortunate enough to grow up around an airplane. My dad had been flying as a young man, and so when we were growing up, I was exposed to that. So, and he was always someone that pushed, pretty hard to do things the right way and then look at the future for success. As I got into my professional career, though, I could talk about many people. My first, I would say, really good job in Orlando. I had a gentleman by the name of Jeff Louie who was really critical in shaping me. When I was in Miami International, a gentleman by the name of Peter Reevely, who really taught me how to write well and convey a message. And Oris Dunham over the years has been very instrumental in being a mentor for me. Patrick Graham in Savannah before he retired. So, I mean, there's several people in the industry over my career and over my life that I think have professionally touched me in a way that and really guided me in why I've been successful over the years. So I have to give credit to a lot of folks out there, and not necessarily just one experience or one person in my case necessarily that had such a huge impact, but I think it was a combination of lots of people that, for whatever reason, took an interest in helping me be successful in this career that I owe a great deal of gratitude to.
I would agree. It started with my parents taking us to the airport on Sundays to watch the airplanes when we were kids. And then I really have to give a lot of credit to my first employer, which was Pan Am, because rather than pigeonholing me in an airport supervisor position, they actually allowed a few of us youngsters to be exposed to marketing for the Pan Am shuttle in Boston and working at a heliport in Manhattan, just going out in the system and doing these crazy jobs. And my counterpart in this at the time was Kim Becker, who now runs San Jose. So we both started out as very young, inexperienced, and our employer, believe it or not, Pan Am allowed us to experience every part of that airline and the airport positions. And I've used that on my resume, and I think that helped me grow through the industry.
That's tremendous. So just to follow up on that, being mentoring now, how important is it, obviously for internally, especially when we're looking to raise up the next generation of leaders, for not necessarily for within the airports, but just next generation leaders in general? How important is that to what you do? And I'll start with Dave.
I think it's extremely important. I think once you get to the level of being a CEO in an organization, one of the more critical things that you do is actually leading and bringing people along. I think we talked a little bit about, over the conference here, there was some discussion about millennials, and that's becoming more of a challenge because in history, as was mentioned previously today at the meetings, we had an opportunity to really bring people along, mentor them, and have them be part of the organization for a long time into the future. Our approach now has to be really, we mentor them, we get them ready, we keep them for as long as we can, but with the understanding that more than likely they're going to move on pretty quickly. And that's a different type of kind of mentoring and leadership, I think, that we're all having to adapt to in this new environment. And we're very fortunate at GSP where we have a lot of tenure in the organization, so we haven't necessarily totally been hit with that yet, but we're seeing more and more of that, especially I would say in smaller organizations, because there's less room for obviously people to move up internally as there might be in a larger organization. So, we kind of look at ourselves as, the prep team or the single A team or the triple A team in baseball, and trying to get people up to the majors so they can move on to medium hubs and large hub airports and other significant positions.
We're fortunate enough in Kansas City to have a University of Central Missouri not too far away that has an aviation program. So I've been fortunate to be involved on that advisory board. And then we take interns from high school on. Anybody who's interested in aviation, we'll get them out in an internship program at the airport. And most of the time, we're trying to talk them out of being pilots and coming over to being airport directors, because everybody wants to be a pilot. But so far, it's been pretty successful. Just getting to the level, anybody that shows an interest, you really got to mentor them right away, because you'll lose them. They'll go on to something else. And we talked about it in the sessions this morning. If you go to be a professional pilot, you graduate with maybe $100,000 in debt, and you'll start out making $25,000 a year. Whereas you should have gone to medical school. You'll be in the same debt, but you'll start out much, much higher. So it's a tough industry.
Well, and I think mentoring never stops, nor being mentored. I don't care whether you're 80 or 80 in a job. Having come from the airline side, the airport side was new to me. So I look at people in this industry, not the two gentlemen sitting next to me, but other people in this industry that helped me when I came over 6 years ago. And I look at that as, knowledge is so powerful, and not sharing knowledge or experience is such a waste. And so to give back, to be able to say to someone, let me share a little bit of the experience, take what works for you, leave what doesn't. But at the end of the day, I don't think mentoring or being mentored ever stops. It's just the constant trade of knowledge throughout your lifespan and your career span that's so important to the job you do.
Do you feel like in within our industry, as you guys have come on board, maybe this is more so for Rhonda, but like that there is almost a loose network of folks who will take the time and like I spoke with Elaine Roberts, Bonnie Allen, they have an informal women's network of new directors who kind of help each other out. Do you feel there's a good amount of that within the industry? I'll just ask Dave that.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think the one, not one thing, but a thing that is great about our industry is the level of sharing that we do across the board. So even though there's no question in this day and age of less aircraft equipment in the market, and therefore, the airlines are picking and choosing, based on profitability levels as to where they're going to put equipment. So we are in competition around the country for that equipment in particular. We all share, whether it's on how you deal with non-aeronautical revenue generation, or, what are you doing with staff these days? What are your training programs? How are you communicating to community? What have you found works? What doesn't work? What are the pitfalls? So I think that's what's great. In the private sector, it is so competitive that you're not going to find competitors sharing a lot of information that they may consider, sensitive. In our industry, it's all about lifting each other up to be successful. So,
you guys agree with that?
I don't think I can name one airport director that I couldn't call today and ask a question or get a call back right away. I think we all know we can call each other anytime.
Rhonda, I mentioned that loose women's network. Is that so? Or?
Well, having come from the airline side and not knowing specific airport directors around the country, and I really knew very few. The first meeting I went to, I think I was in the job a month, and we had a meeting in Houston, Texas, and it was the CEO forum, and I remember everybody, this is a new person, let's go meet her, let's go talk to her, and it was that feeling of welcome, and just throughout that 3 days, everybody offered their help, everybody offered their card, and it wasn't, I'm smarter than you, let me tell you what to do. That wasn't the environment or the feeling you got. It really was, we want to help. We welcome people into this industry, and we all know that it's challenging, and so anything we can do to help. So I think it was, to me, much, much different than on the airline side, where there was that, let's help each other, let's make sure that we know what's going on. If I've got a challenge, let me tell you, if I've got something good, this worked, I'll share that with you as well. There wasn't that hiding of the success stories. So I think it was awesome, and I think it's one of the few industries that's very highlighted.
And that's because probably you're also loosely linked anyway, right? And it's not just like, he happens to run another company that's not even really affiliated. I mean, you guys, it's a network, so it literally, you have to remain connected, correct? Moments, our lives are obviously, then our careers are defined by certain moments. I was wondering if you could just share, some seminal moment that kind of shaped your career as the person you are. Obviously, most people will point to like tragedies, which hopefully you don't not, but or obviously big obstacles and things like that. But if you could share, a historic moment in your careers that kind of changed the way you thought and acted and handled situations. Go back to Mark.
Well, maybe this is not the answer you're looking for.
But go ahead with it.
I was 10 years old. My parents took me to the movie Airport. Not airplane, Airport. George Kennedy, Dean Martin, and Burt Lancaster was the airport manager, and I think it was Minneapolis, and he had the coolest office. And his secretary brought him dinner, and I went, Dad, that's what I want to do. I want to be an airport manager. And I was 10 years old. And that's what started me in the interest. But there have been several things along the way. You never know where you're going to end up. Sometimes it's fate. Sometimes it's decisions you make. So, but that started me in the industry, I think.
This wasn't an industry that I had planned to go into. I sort of fell into it by fluke and fell in love with it. But I think there were probably two, and both of them were somewhat tragedies. But when I was with TWA, unfortunately, Flight 800 went down out of New York, and it was a very trying time. And having responsibility for airports back then, you saw the impact that one disaster can have, and it made me set a whole new level of how relevant our jobs are in this industry, and just how important they are to always be on top of and understand and be able to meet and talk and and be there for the public. The second piece was when I came over to the airport side, and many people have probably seen this, but we were hit by an F4 tornado on Good Friday in 2011. And again, I wasn't at work. It was about 8 o'clock at night. I was out, and within 15 minutes got to work, and you walk in and you see the devastation of an airport, and you see all the people standing there waiting for you to say, okay, what do I do next? Where do I go? What are we doing? And you realize that you can have such an impact to a community. And in the case of that, we were able to reopen the airport within the next day, which was critical because it was a holiday weekend and there were lots of travelers. And I think it helped the community to understand the asset that our airport was and how critical the management team there was to being able to restore the faith in getting the airport open. So both of those events, as hard as they were, make me proud to be in this industry and want to stay in it, because there's a challenge every day. And the challenge is you can really make a difference in.
Dave?
Well, I think for me, it's a little bit of a couple of events, maybe a string of things that happened. I started out going to school at Emory-Riddle Aeronautical University, actually to be a commercial airline pilot. Ran out of money, had to go to work, got laid off 3 times, cut firewood for 9 months to make a living and pay a mortgage payment. Was married to my high school sweetheart at that time, and still am today. By the way, I better say that. So the experience of being in school, seeing the bottom fall out on the airline industry in 79, 80, not being able to finish school at that point, going through the hard knocks of going out to work, getting laid off, and having to do some hard manual labor for a few years, got me back into school again. And I finished my degree at Florida Institute of Technology when I was pushing 27, and then got into the industry. So I think that was one. I think another critical moment and juncture for me was I'd spent roughly 12 and a half years at Orlando International, knowing that at some point I wanted to be an airport director, CEO somewhere, and making that jump out of Orlando to go run 3 general aviation airports to start that part of my career was really a major milestone. And I had a lot of encouragement by some of those mentors out there in the industry that said, Dave, it's time for you to make the jump. So those were a few things that kind of got me to where I'm at today and put me on the right path.
The Cruise team is committed to innovating the traveler's experience by offering quality brands and attractive state-of-the-art facilities while providing the ultimate in guest care. Cruise, founded in 1972 by my father, Robert Cruise, is one of the original ACDB firms in this concession industry. We pride ourselves in the ability to operate food and beverage and retail at the highest level. Our operations and brands have been recognized by social and print media, including, but not limited to, USA Today, Travel and Leisure Magazine, Restaurant News Magazine, and Airport Revenue News. We currently operate 35 locations in Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, Los Angeles International Airport, Dulles International Airport, and Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. Providing a sense of place to our markets, Cruise has some of the hottest, chef-inspired, local, and national brands with cutting-edge designs, quality offerings, and top-notch operations. We hand select and train the friendliest, most dedicated professional team members and provide extensive customer service and brand training to ensure that they can be successful in their jobs while providing award-winning customer service. We recognize that our team is truly the heartbeat of our organization. Cruise's vision is to innovate the traveler's experience by offering current and exciting brands with friendly service and facilities that welcome, engage, excite, and satisfy the traveling public, airport employees, and our airline partners. We look forward to partnering with you in innovating the traveler's experience.
So it seems like, to me, airports are almost like casinos and hospitals. They're near 24-hour environments, and so you guys are almost seeming tethered to everything that's going on, like you mentioned with the tornadoes and things and getting calm, and et cetera. So how important is it, or is it even able? Are you even able, or is it possible to unplug and kind of unwind and unstress? I'll just start with Dave.
I think it's difficult. I would say I was better at it when I was a little bit younger and still had kids at home. I think becoming an empty nester now, it has gotten more difficult to unplug, probably in part because of technology at the same time. And especially when you have a lot going on. All of us have had, whether they're tragedies, weather events and natural disasters, or whether we're trying to work on terminal programs. It really does become, unfortunately, in many cases and at times, 24/7, 365. And it is hard to back away. I've been trying to still find, it used to be I could find those places to go down in the Caribbean and that had no cell service. I had no Wi-Fi, and that was wonderful because you could literally truly unplug when nobody could contact you. But it's not any different than last night. I'm at a dinner and it's 10 o'clock at night, and I'm getting telephone calls because we're doing an airline move into new ticket counters, and there's some problems. And then I get a call that TSA decided to pull out and shut down the checkpoint when we had some delayed flights, and flight crews couldn't actually get through security in order to get to the flights to fly the flights, and we had people out at the gate ready to go. And so it really does become very difficult to step back and unplug. I'm going to try to get better about that as I go forward. I'll admit I haven't been good about it, because I think when you're in this position, and Rhonda mentioned this and alluded to it earlier, the neat thing about this job is that you get an opportunity to be like a private sector business, run a business with all the facets of a business. But I think, and I enjoy that immensely. And then the other part that is very gratifying is community service as a part of it. That we are stewards of an asset that is critical to each of our communities and the community's success long term from an economic development standpoint. And so when you have those types of things in front of you, it's hard not to be passionately engaged on a significant level most of the time, and it makes it very difficult to disconnect.
Mark?
25 years ago, I carried a vibrating pager. The phone number would show up and you'd have to call back. Today, it's an iPhone. So I don't know what it's like to have this kind of time because I've never had it. I'm just used to it. Vacations, Croatia, wherever you are, you're connected and you know what's going on at your airport and they can get a hold of you. So I don't know what it would be like to have that kind of downtime. Which is a good way. I'm glad I don't know what I'm missing. It's just part of the job.
I think there's ways to unplug and still be connected. And, I've always been a firm believer that if I'm not happy in my personal life, I'm not going to be happy in my career life. And, I made the choice to have a career along with my husband, and that's great. But you have to realize that there are two parts to your life. So even though we are connected 24/7 to the phone and to beepers, pagers, you name it, emails, text, Instagram, I can still unplug at the end of the day when I go home, knowing that I might have to face an emergency or have to face a phone call. But I can let go. It's when I get home and I walk through the door and I know that, my husband's there, or the kids are home for the day, or friends are coming over, I can let go for a few minutes and enjoy life. And I think that has helped me to be successful on the career side.
So hobbies then, it's funny because I interviewed Jeannie Marie Lindsay last year, and she's saying, well, I have these groves and olives, and I make olive oils and things like that. She still owes me a bottle, by the way. But that was her way. So just really briefly, what do you have any hobbies? Mark said he can't unplug, but you must have something if it's a stamp collection or something.
Well, hobbies usually revolve around the industry. I enjoy golf, but most of the time I'm golfing with industry people. I enjoy travel, and it's usually going to a conference. It's just, you take it where you can get it. And so usually evolves around aviation, which I enjoy.
I have two. I love antiques. I love the story of antiques. I love tracing back the history. And so my husband and I both enjoy antiques and old farmhouses and old things. So it's kind of a passion of ours and something we like to do. The second is we like to visit wineries. So we both are huge fans of wine, and lots of different wineries across the country and across the world, and we've visited a lot of them.
Travel is, my wife and I like to travel. So coming up this summer, it's going to be the first time I've taken a 2-week vacation in probably 25 years, 27 years. And I'm going to go to Italy for a couple of weeks and experience the Amalfi Coast and Tuscany for a little while, drink a little wine
Wow.
while
that's
we're
my
there.
favorite.
So we're really looking forward to that. But I have some hobbies. I do during that time that I was bridging some gaps in school. I was a cabinet maker and custom furniture maker. So that's a little side for me. That's to get out and it's really doing something with my hands is what relaxes me and gives me a chance to kind of settle down a little bit and get away when I have an opportunity. And then new in my life and my wife's life in the last 2 years is a grandchild. So we have a first grandson, having 2 daughters. Now having a grandson in the family is exciting, and learning how to enjoy that and have a second grandchild on the way. So I think the focus is starting to turn a little bit, and as you work towards. And I want to say I'm done. I'm not done in my career yet, but the closer you get to winding up the career, it becomes about, as we've talked about, mentoring staff, mentoring people, leadership. It's also then trying to step back a little bit and let those people step into the forefront at times, and hopefully that will give us a little bit of a chance and me a little bit of a chance to actually start enjoying some other things that are presenting themselves now in life.
That's great. And the final question is, and Mark, you can't say it's because it's your hobby, but if you weren't running an airport, what would your dream job be? And I'm going to start with Dave.
Well, and I'll start out by saying, if you're, I think every one of us in this industry are passionate about what we do. So I don't know that any of us look at this. Not that I want to speak for Rhonda or for Mark. I don't think we look at it as a job. It's fun. Every day, as we've talked about, is different. Whether it's negotiating an airline agreement, whether it's dealing with an operational issue, whether it's dealing with fire and police, whether it's dealing with local politics, state politics, federal politics, it all presents itself, and that's what makes the job so interesting. If I go back in my time, and if I wasn't doing this, I came at a very critical juncture when I went back to college, and I was trying to make some decisions on what I was going to do at that particular time. I actually tried to go in the military because I wanted to fly. I wanted to be a jet jockey. And unfortunately, I could not have gotten out by my 27th and a half birthday from flight school. So they would not let me finish. But if I could have gone back and maybe started just a little bit sooner, I might have been flying jets in the military. So,
Mark.
I would be a writer for television in Hollywood, behind the scenes.
I can see that. No, really? Is there anything in comedy?
A variety. I'll be watching a television show with my wife, and I'll tell her how it's going to end or what the next punchline is going to be, and she's like, "You should be writing this stuff." And I said, "Yes, I should."
Well, you might be living it every day in Kansas City.
That's true.
Airport. So you're getting a lot of material, right?
A lot of material.
Rhonda.
I'd be working for the CIA.